You finally got the thing, the job, the grade, the offer, the follower count, whatever it was you wanted. And your very first thought wasn't, I earned this. It was something quieter and a lot colder. Any minute now, they're going to figure out I have no idea what I'm doing. You smiled, you said thank you, you accepted it, and underneath, a small part of you was already bracing to be exposed. If that feeling is familiar, I need you to note two things up front. Warm. You are not broken, and you are absolutely not alone. That feeling has a name. It's called imposter syndrome. The sense that you're a fraud, that your success is some mix of luck and good timing and fooling the right people, and that any day now, everyone will see the real, less impressive you. Curious. Here's the part that makes it so strange. The people who feel it most are usually the ones with the most evidence that it isn't true. To understand why, go back to 1978. Two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, kept noticing the same thing in their work. They were talking to women who were, by every measure, succeeding. High grades, awards, degrees, real accomplishments, and almost none of them believed it. These women were convinced they'd somehow slipped through, that they'd tricked the admissions board, charmed the professor, gotten lucky on the test, that they didn't actually belong. Clance and Imes gave this feeling a name. They called it the impostor phenomenon. Notice the word they chose. Not syndrome, phenomenon. They weren't describing a disease. They were describing an experience. A very common one, hiding behind a lot of accomplished, put-together people. Serious. And one detail from their work matters more than almost anything else. It wasn't the low performers who felt like frauds. It was the high performers. So why doesn't success fix it? You'd think one more win would finally quiet the voice. It doesn't. And the reason is a loop. Picture something you have to prove yourself at. A presentation, an exam, a new role. Right away, the anxiety shows up, and you deal with it one of two ways. Maybe you over-prepare. You work twice as hard as you probably need to, checking everything 3 times. Or you do the opposite. You put it off, dread it, then throw yourself at it in a panic at the last second. Either way, let's say it goes well. You succeed. Curious. Now here's the trap. When the win comes, you don't file it under, I'm good at this. If you over-prepared, you tell yourself it only went well because you worked insanely hard. Anyone would have with that much effort. If you procrastinated, you tell yourself you just got lucky. You scraped by. So the success never actually lands as proof. It gets explained away. And the belief underneath, the belief that you're secretly not good enough, walks away completely untouched. Then the next challenge comes, and the whole thing runs again. Anxiety, scramble, success, discount, repeat. That's the imposter cycle. It's a machine that takes your wins and quietly deletes them before they can change your mind. Now, the fraud feeling doesn't look the same in everyone. An expert named Valerie Young spent years on this, and she noticed that people measure their realness in different ways. She grouped it into 5 types. See if one of them sounds a little too familiar. First, the perfectionist. For them, 99 out of 100 feels like failure. If it wasn't flawless, it doesn't count, and they must be a fraud for the one thing they got wrong. Second, the expert. They feel like a phony until they know absolutely everything. There's always one more course to take, one more thing they should have read, before they're allowed to feel qualified. Third, the natural genius. This one judges themselves on ease. If a skill doesn't come quickly and smoothly, they feel exposed. Struggling, to them, is proof they don't have it. Fourth, the soloist. They believe real competence means doing it alone. Asking for help feels like admitting you were never capable in the first place. And fifth, the superhuman. They try to excel at everything at once. Work, relationships, hobbies, all of it, perfectly. And any dropped ball feels like the whole disguise slipping. 5 different masks. But underneath, the same quiet fear. That if people saw the real you, they'd be disappointed. So who deals with this? A small, anxious minority? Not even close. Researchers often cite that around 70% of people feel imposter feelings at least once. It's been found in students, in doctors, in engineers, in CEOs, in people you would swear have nothing to prove. Curious. And here's the genuinely strange part. It doesn't fade as you get better. Very often, it gets louder. because every time you level up, you land in a new room full of people who seem more qualified than you. The bar moves. The comparison resets. The exact success that should reassure you just drops you into a bigger pond where you feel small again, which means the feeling is not a reliable signal. Some of the most capable people who have ever lived were quietly convinced they were about to be exposed. Feeling like a fraud tells you almost nothing about whether you actually are one. Curious. Now, here's what almost nobody adds, and it's the part I think matters most. For decades, the advice was simple. You feel like an imposter? Then fix yourself. Be more confident. Believe in yourself harder. In 2021, two writers, Ruchika Tulshyan and Jodi Ann Burey, pushed back on that, in what became one of the most read articles Harvard Business Review has ever published. Their argument, roughly, was this. We took a feeling and turned it into a personal defect. We told people, especially women and people of color, that the problem was inside their heads, when often, the reason someone feels like they don't belong in the room is that the room was never really built for them. They also pointed out something about that original 1978 study. The women in it were a fairly narrow group. The role of bias, of exclusion, of being the only person like you in the building, wasn't really part of the picture. So the reframe is this. Sometimes the fraud feeling is your own harsh inner critic. And sometimes it's a completely reasonable reaction to an environment that keeps signaling you don't fit. Telling that second person to just be more confident misses the point entirely. Warm. You're allowed to hold both, work on the voice inside, and stop assuming the voice is always right about whose fault it is. So, let's pull it together. Imposter syndrome isn't a disorder. It's not in any diagnostic manual. It's an experience, and a wildly common one. At its core, it's a gap. A gap between how capable you actually are and how capable you feel. Your competence is real. Your confidence just didn't come along for the ride. The cycle keeps that gap open by deleting your wins. The 5 types are just different rulers you use to measure yourself as a fake. And climbing higher tends to widen the gap, not close it. But it is not always a private failing to be conquered with more grit. Sometimes it's the room. Sometimes it's who was never invited into the story of who belongs. So what do you actually do with all this? Start with one small move. When the fraud feeling shows up, name it out loud. That's the imposter talking. Naming it turns a fact you believe into a feeling you're having. And those are very different things. Then separate the two. What you feel is not evidence. What you did is keep the receipts. The work you finished, the problem you solved, the thing you built. When the voice says you faked it, make it argue with the record. Warm. And hold on to the strangest comfort in all of this. Real frauds, actual con artists, almost never lie awake worried they're frauds. That worry, the one keeping you up, is not the sound of you being exposed. Warm. It's the sound of someone who cares whether they've earned it, which is pretty much the opposite of a fake. So the next time that cold little voice says they're going to find you out, you can answer it honestly. They already did. That's why you're in the room.